Correct design and proper operation of cold storages is necessary to maintain the quality of frozen products like frozen seafood or frozen chicken or mutton. Dehydration or freezer burn is the most common problem encountered in fish or shrimps or seafood during storage. The problem of freezer burn arising in cold storage not only by temperature abuse. If you maintain the temperature, though you maintain the temperature of the cold storages minus 20 or minus 18 degrees centigrade, and you have hot gas defrosting mechanism or hot coil defrosting mechanism, even though you can encounter the freezer burn problem in cold storages. Why? Because the fluctuation of our relative humidity. Yes, humidity is nothing but the amount of water vapor or moisture present in the air is called humidity. Humidity is nothing but dampness. And what is relative humidity? The amount of water vapor present in the air expressed as percentage of the amount of water vapor required to attain the dew point or saturation point. If, for example, relative humidity is 70%, then 30% is needed to get the dew point. Dew point is nothing but the condensation. When the air gets saturation, then the dew point will occur. So that is about relative humidity. Now, another important definition. What is the sublimation? Sublimation is the process of changing of ice into water vapor without converting the water in the air. That is called sublimation. Generally, from solid state to liquid state, then liquid state to gaseous state. That is the water properties. But whereas in the sublimation, straight away from the solid to evaporation. At what circumstances sublimation will take place in cold store? Due to abnormality in relative humidity and the high pressure, ingress of cold store door more frequently, or entering of warm air. Then the last definition, desiccation. Desiccation means it's a kind of drying mechanism to produce dried products. Then desiccation is the mechanism. It will extract the water molecules or moisture from the meat or fish or shrimps. Actually, frozen shrimps or frozen fish at minus 20 degrees centigrade, we can store for 24 months. Unfortunately, within 6 months or within 1 year, the products getting freezer burned or the products encounter dehydration, severe burns. We can extend the shelf life about 24 months and we can reduce the electricity bill 10 to 15%, which is generating by the running the cold storages. Evaporator coils, evaporator cooling coils, running time also we can reduce. Relative humidity plays a crucial role. If you are maintaining temperature well, defrosting with hot gas mechanism, and you have alternative cooling units, so one unit defrosting and another unit you can operate, and hardly the defrosting also will take 10 minutes or 15 minutes, the advanced technology. Even then, if the relative humidity drops, then it will extract moisture from the frozen products, frozen shrimps or seafood. How the relative humidity will extract the moisture, how the dropping of relative humidity will extract the moisture from the frozen products in the holding freezer, we will discuss in details. We are freezing the product at minus 40 degrees centigrade.
which attains the core temperature minus 20 or minus 19, 21, like that. Minus 18 degrees centigrade core temperature and minus 40 degrees centigrade freezing point. As per the validation study, we can hold the product in a cold storage for 24 months. But unfortunately, the shelf life of the product is reduced to 1 year. How to prevent the freezer burn during cold storage of the frozen seafood? Holding freezer, a cold storage, can often lead to problems because humidity present in the air makes ice and condensation form, resulting in loads of bothersome practical difficulties and revenue enabling costs. Most companies that operate refrigerated or freezer storage facilities have learned to tackle the normal day-to-day ice and condensation problems, have invested in ways to keep them minimum. Problem is that most of the food business operators dealing with the symptoms, not handling on the root cause, because simply the condensation or ice forming on the cooling units, cooling surfaces or walls of the cold storage or floor of the cold storage, they are defrosting and they are cleaning and again they are running the refrigeration unit. They are not focusing on the control measures. I mean, they are not conducting the root cause. They are not taking the preventive measures for reoccurrence of the frequent formation of ice on cooling coils. Uncontrolled humidity can have big effects on wide range of operating costs. Ice forming on fixtures and equipment, blockaging evaporators, mist forming in the air. These are all due to slow opening doors, ineffective defrosting system, etc. Low evaporation temperature ultimately, and multiple defrosting cycles, heavy load on the refrigeration system, etc. Due to this melting ice and formation of ice, barcoding also we cannot detect properly and the packaging material also gets damaged. So lot of disadvantages also there. Finally, it leads to non-productive workflow. Look at this diagram, cold storage. This is the door. If you open the door, the air which is outside air, the outside air, warm air contains more moisture than cold air. Then the outside air will enter inside the cold storage. It will move upward, outside air, because of dry condition, less weight. The warm air is less weight than cool air, so it will always move in a upward. So from the top of the door, the warm air will enter and will, once the warm air enters and touches the ceilings or cooling surfaces, then inside the chilled circulate air also there. So the dew point will come down. So dew point means it facilitates the condensation, nothing but the condensation. So once the warm air contains more moisture enter inside the cold storage, and the dew point will occur. So the moisture dripping, condensation, and fall on the floor and fall on the packaging material and on the cooling coils also the condensation will form. Once the water droplets fall on the cooling coil, then it will form as the ice crystals. Accumulation of ice crystals in cooling coil will touch the temperature. If cold storage is running minus 18 degree centigrade temperature, if the cooling coils frost formation occurred, then the fans are circulating the air, the temperature will comes down drastically, and this is how the cold air. So cold air always coming the down and coming out. So at the opening door of the cold storage, you can find the fog or mist. So this is how the cold store mechanism. And the blower's velocity at the speed of the air also will influence the dehydration of the product. The velocity also should match the dia of the cold storage, design of the cold storage. How the relative humidity will drop. For example, if your cold storage is maintaining at a 60 or 50 relative humidity, so if the warm air contains 80 or 90 relative humidity, then frequent opening of the doors, the warm air enters inside the cold storage and the dew point will occur, condensation on the cold storage cooling surfaces and packaging material and floors also condensation will occur. So the moisture which is present inside the cold storage and outside the warm air also will condensate and fall on the cooling surface. Automatically the relative humidity will drop from 50-62, the relative humidity will drop to 20 or 30. If the relative humidity decreases in cold storages, then automatically it will extract the moisture from the frozen products. This is how the relative humidity will influence the shelf life of the product. Even though if you are maintaining the temperature at -18 or 22 degrees centigrade, relative humidity fails to maintain in a proper, your product also susceptible to freezer burn or dehydration. So moisture laden air come in contact with the cold surfaces or condenser or evaporator coil, so ice formation will occur. So more defrosting cycles will lead to product shelf life, product dehydration. So that's what we have to reduce the defrost cycles. So proper designing of the cold storage and velocity of the air circulation inside the cold storage should match with the design of the cold storage. And the controlling of the relative humidity means door opening times if we can reduce, and door gaps we can arrest, and number of door opening times, and the warm air entry also if we can minimize, then the product shelf life also we can extend, and reducing the running hours of refrigeration units will give us good results.